Well, let's take this a little bit further now. I'm joined from our Pretoria studios by researcher at the Institute for Security Studies, the ISS. It is Ottilia Maunganidze who joins us. Hello to you, Ottilia. I hope you can hear me clearly. Give me your impressions of how the ICC is handling this particular case. What's your first thoughts?
Well, firstly, the decision by the trial chamber to acquit Laurent Gbagbo was something that was quite expected, not least because the challenges that the prosecution had in actually giving forward evidence that directly linked him to the crimes that were committed in Côte d'Ivoire were something that were seen throughout the court process, which is always streamed live for people to see.
Why does it appear, there seems to be a general consensus with the public that the ICC is unable to hold these high-ranking statesmen, former presidents, for example, Gbagbo is perhaps a primary example, to account? The processes seem to be flawed, the evidence doesn't seem to be able to be found, it drags on too long. Or is that an unfair statement to make?
So I'll start with the last one, which relates to the time it takes for these prosecutions to happen. That is one of the major criticisms, more of the Office of the Prosecutor than the other parts of the court. Because when you have a case like this where the person is acquitted, questions arise as to the amount of time that they've actually spent in detention while the trial was ongoing. Now, when it comes to ensuring accountability on the part of the International Criminal Court or ultimately on the part of states who are supposed to have the primary responsibility to actually deal with these cases, there we see the real challenge there. It has a lot, obviously, to do with the lack of cooperation that prosecutors, either at the International Criminal Court or even locally at domestic level, be it a national prosecuting authority, being able to get the right kind of information it needs to be able to secure a conviction for high-profile, wealthy people that also wield a lot of power. It's not easy, and the ICC has just demonstrated that what's challenging at domestic level is equally challenging at international level.
It's a very difficult court, I would imagine, to handle, because you need to be a signatory to the ICC. It's almost voluntary, voluntarily that you're part of the ICC. Does the world take the International Criminal Court seriously?
Right, so you either are a member of the International Criminal Court, of which 122 countries are, or if you are not, then the UN Security Council refers situations from non-member states to the International Criminal Court. What we've seen is, in the absence of universal support for any institution, and the ICC is no exception, it makes it much harder. You raised a question earlier, Gareth, about fairness and equality of process. If a court is unable to deal with everyone, as it were, criticisms will come. Not that any court is able to do that, but of course it opens a door that people from more powerful countries will not be touched. So until there is a universal ratification of the International Criminal Court statute, it will always face that hurdle. It's unlike the International Court of Justice, where all UN member states have to be party to that court.
Help me unpack that statute you were just talking about, Ottilia, for a moment. I find the ICC a fascinating case study when it comes to anything involving law and international law, when you have member states, non-member states, and you've got this International Criminal Court trying to oversee this. And you mentioned this ratification and the statute. Tell me exactly what the problem is there, because it seems to be a major hurdle, but it's quite complicated. But if you could explain it to me in Gareth terms, what exactly is the issue?
I'm not sure what Gareth terms are, but I'm going to try simplify it for you.
That's Gareth terms.
The International Criminal Court, the document that created the International Criminal Court, was negotiated by member states, so states that are part of the UN system, which is pretty much all the countries in the world. But because of its jurisdiction, and it deals with crimes against humanity, war crimes, genocide, and now a crime known as the crime of aggression, which is where a country enters another country's territory by force, for example. Because of that, member states basically said that this has to be a court that countries must sign up to. The idea in creating the International Criminal Court was there wouldn't be a country that would say, we want war crimes or crimes against humanity to be committed in our territory. So the idea was that all member states would ratify or would sign up to the International Criminal Court. But like I say, to date, there's still 71 countries that haven't signed up to the International Criminal Court, which means only those 122 countries immediately fall within the court's jurisdiction, which means a citizen of those countries can immediately be prosecuted if there's a situation that comes from those countries. For the other countries, so for the other 71 countries, the United Nations Security Council would have to refer that the crimes that are being committed in that country, it would have to send those to the ICC, and it would only be able to do that after, of course, the majority of the UN Security Council has voted that those crimes are happening and that they need to be dealt with by a court.
Ottilia, wonderful insight and analysis, and I appreciate your time in coming through to our Pretoria studios to speak to us today. My thanks to Ottilia Maunganidze, joining us from the Institute of Security Studies. She's a researcher for the ISS.